But there were others who used another invention in maintaining that the intellectual substance cannot be united to the body as a form. For they say that the intellect, even what Aristotle calls possible, is a separate substance not united to us as a form. And they endeavor to confirm this first from the words of Aristotle, who says, speaking of this understanding, that it is separate from and mingled with the body, and simple and impassive, which things could not be said of it if it were the form of a body. Likewise, by the demonstration of the same, he proves that, because the possible intellect receives all species of sensible things as potentially existing to them, it must necessarily lack them all. Just as the pupil, which receives all kinds of colors, lacks all color, for if it had any color of its own, that color would prevent other colors from being seen. Indeed, nothing would be seen except under that color, and a similar thing would happen to the possible intellect if it had some form or nature of itself from sensible things. But this would have to be the case if he were mixed with any body, and likewise if it were the form of some body. For when form and matter become one, it is necessary that the form partake of something of the nature of that of which it is the form. It is therefore impossible for the possible intellect to be mixed with the body, or to be the act or form of any body. Still, if it were the form of some material body, the reception of this intellect would be of the same kind as the reception of the first matter, for that which is the form of a body does not receive anything apart from its substance, but the first matter receives individual forms. Therefore the possible understanding would receive the forms as they are individual, and thus he would not know the universals, which is obviously false. In addition, the raw material is not cognitive of the forms it receives. If, therefore, the reception of the possible intellect were the same as that of the first matter, the possible intellect would not know the forms received. That is false. Further, it is impossible for the body to have infinite power, as Aristotle proves in Physics 8. Now, the understanding is possible in a way of infinite power, for through it we judge infinite things according to number, inasmuch as through it we know universals, under which are comprehended particulars, infinite in power. Therefore the intellect is not a possible virtue in the body. From these, Averroes and some of the ancients moved, as he says, to posit that the possible intellect by which the soul understands is separate according to its being from the body, and that it is not the form of the body. But because this understanding has nothing to do with us, nor would we understand through it, unless it were connected with us in some way, he also determines the manner in which it is continued with us, saying that the species understood in act is the form of the possible intellect, just as the visible in act is the form of the visual power. Hence, from the possible understanding and the form understood in the act, it becomes one. To whatever, then, the aforesaid understood form is connected, the possible understanding is connected. Now it is joined to us by means of a phantasm, which is a kind of subject of that understood form. In this way, therefore, even the possible understanding is continued with us. But it is easy to see that these are frivolous and impossible. For having understanding is understanding. But what is understood is that whose intelligible species is united to the understanding. Therefore, because the intelligible species is united to the understanding in man in some way, man will not have that which is intelligent, but only that which is understood separated from the understanding. In addition, thus the understood species is actually the form of the possible intellect, just as the visible species is actually the form of the visual power, or of the eye itself. Now the understood species is compared to phantasms, as the visible species is actually compared to the colored thing that is outside the soul, and he uses this simile, and Aristotle also, There is a similar continuation of the intellect possible through the intelligible form to the phantasm that is in us, and of the visual powers to the color that is in the stone. But this continuation does not make the stone to be seen, but only to be seen. Therefore, the aforesaid continuation of the possible understanding with us does not make us understand, but only to be understood. Now the plane is what is properly and truly said to be what a man understands. For we would not investigate the nature of the intellect, except by that which we understand ourselves. Still, everything that knows is connected to the object through the power of cognition, and not the other way around, just as everything that works is connected to the thing that is worked through the power of operation. But man is intelligent through the intellect as well as through cognitive power. Therefore, it is not united to the understanding through an intelligible form, but rather through an intelligible understanding. Further, that by which something works must be its form, for it does nothing except according to what it actually is. But in fact nothing exists except through that which is its form. Hence Aristotle also proves that the soul is a form, by the fact that the animal lives and feels through the soul. But man understands, and not except through the understanding. Hence Aristotle, inquiring about the principle by which we understand, tells us the nature of the possible understanding. It is therefore necessary that the possible understanding be formally united to us, and not only through its object. In addition, the understanding in act and the intelligible in act are one, just as sense in act and sensible in act. But the understanding is not in power, and the intelligible in power, just as neither is the sense in power, and the sensible in power. The appearance of a thing, therefore, insofar as it is in phantasms, is not actually intelligible, just as the species of color is not actually perceived according to what is in the stone, but only according to what is in the pupil. In this way, however, the intelligible species is only continued with us as it is in phantasms, according to the aforesaid position. Therefore, it is not continued with us insofar as it is one with the possible understanding as its form. Therefore, there cannot be a medium by which the possible understanding continues with us. It is clear that he who introduced this position was deceived by equivocation. For the colors existing outside the soul, in the present light, are actually visible as having the power to move the sight, but not as actually sensed, inasmuch as they are one with the sense in the act. And likewise, phantasms become actually intelligible by the light of the agent's intellect, so that they can move the possible intellect, but not so that they are actually understood, according to the fact that they are one with the possible intellect made in the act. Again, where the higher activity of the living is found, there is found a higher species of life corresponding to that activity. For in plants is found the only action pertaining to nutrition. In animals, however, a higher activity is found, namely, to feel and move according to its place. Hence the animal also lives in a higher type of life. But there is still in man a higher activity pertaining to life than in an animal, namely understanding. Therefore man will have a higher quality of life, but life is through the soul. A man will therefore have a higher soul by which he lives than the sensible soul. But there is nothing higher than the understanding. Therefore the intellect is the soul of man, and consequently his form. Still, that which results in the operation of a thing is not given to any one in appearance, because the operation is the second act, but the form by which something has its appearance is the first act. Now the union of the intellect possible with man, according to the aforesaid position, results in the operation of man, for it is effected by means of imagination, which, according to the philosopher, is a movement made by sense according to act. Man, therefore, does not derive his species from such a union. Therefore, man does not differ specifically from the brute animals in that he has an understanding. Further, if man is divided into species by the fact that he is rational and having understanding, whoever is in the human species is rational and having understanding. But the child, even before it comes out of the womb, is in human form, in whom, however, there are not yet phantasms, which are actually intelligible. Therefore, man is not a man having an understanding through the fact that the understanding is continued to man by means of an intelligible form whose subject is phantasm.